Hello, welcome to another episode of Just Right, however you want to pronounce it. Well, let's do it wrong. Today, I want to talk a bit about attention and how that eventually ends up working with teamwork. So this is something that I have taught at university a few times and then in a few other places. Um, it's this sequence that really makes sense to me, but I don't know if it makes sense to everyone else, so we'll see. So, attention. Why is attention important? Um, let's see if I can hear here. All right, that's a little better. Okay, so why is attention important for teamwork? Well, let's get into it. So first of all, maybe some of you all have seen by now this old video of these people playing basketball, and they ask them, like a researcher, a teacher, or a trainer, someone asks you to count the number of passes, and as you're focused on the number of passes, you might miss someone in a gorilla suit walking by. And so, for many people that are really focused on counting the passes, they're really surprised when you play it back. So I encourage you to look that up. If you haven't, if you've already seen it, there's another one. And unfortunately, I'll spoil this one too. So then they do it again, and it's a different place, it's on stage. And if you're looking for the gorilla, this time you do see it. But while you're looking for that and the passes, you also miss the curtain changing color, and you miss a member of one team leaving the stage and all that. So it's a great example of how even though we think we're paying attention, we think we're giving focus, that we can still miss things. And so there's a couple different ways to take this. One is like this issue that can happen when you're really focused on one thing. You can miss a lot of other things that seem obvious. So one thing is to give yourself a little grace and forgiveness, and also your teammates or your partner or anyone else in your life that, like, how did you miss that? How did you miss that? Well, if we're really searching for one thing, we will miss other things around it. That's just how attention works. It turns out that we're actually not great at multitasking. I thought I was. I thought I was this great multitasker, and with my OCD, I had to be multitasking all the time. I had to have on music or stand up or an audiobook or something, and have on light, and have on probably sometimes music and an audiobook, and I had to be studying. And the more I got into that, the harder it was for me to pay attention in class, pay attention at work, pay attention to my partner, to my family, as I'm, so scattered on all these other things. But I thought I was good at it because I'd gotten away with it for a while. But what it turns out is that multitasking is really attention switching. And it's my understanding, please go check it out for yourself. So just from what I've learned, that you can do some things multitasking, like eating and watching a show, or going for a walk and listening to an audiobook, something like that. But my understanding is that it hits different parts of the brain. But if you are trying to actually follow a narrative, so what if I'm trying to listen to an audiobook and listen to my wife tell me a story? Well, it's actually really hard because it's using the same part of the brain, and I'm not really doing both. I'm switching between the two. Half a second of audiobook, half a second of my partner, half a second audiobook, all that. And what that does is it causes a 40% drop in productivity, according to a study that was done in American Psychological Association about switching costs. Also, you can look up the myth of multitasking. It's an old article on Forbes. So for me, combining a couple of parts there. So especially for those of us with OCD or an anxiety or any mental health disorder, if we're having these intrusive thoughts, and I can mean it in the technical sense in OCD, which is really dark, scary, intrusive thoughts of harming someone, harming ourselves, or death or taboo thoughts, or even more colloquially, intrusive thoughts of, oh, how am I going to pass this test? Or, oh, I really love this thing. Longer conversation later, perhaps, on the use of language and around that. But either way, you can even just be thinking about what's for dinner. What are we going to do next? So that info running through the brain, well, also we imagine, I don't know, something coming across that. So um, if you're just listening and not watching, so you can imagine maybe an X and Y axis, and something is going from left to right, which would be your thoughts that are just running back and forth and all these things. And then from top to bottom, maybe that's some input you're trying to receive. So in the context of teamwork, that could be your teammate trying to pass something along to you. In the context of a relationship, that's your partner maybe asking for bid for attention, which we'll get into. But if you have all these thoughts running back and forth, well, there's going to be a disturbance in the middle, right? There's going to be some noise that you can miss. And I learned this in school, and for the life of me, I cannot find it online. So if anybody does, please send it to me. But it was this metaphor of a basketball pass and meant, sent, heard. So when we're communicating what was meant, and then the middle, the sent part, and then what was heard on the receiving end. So if you play basketball, if you're passing it, so maybe the pass was errant. Something went wrong, your hand slipped. You're between a bounce pass and a chest pass, and you just mixed it up. On the sent part, something could get in the way. Somebody blocks it, or it bounces off a foot, or a dead spot on the floor. And then the heard side, the received side, so somebody's trying to catch it and they fumble, or it hits their finger or something. So communication can go wrong in any of those spots. And I think we often look for fault. Most of the time there is no fault, personally, is what I think. And maybe I'll talk about that more in the future. But all that to say that there's all this stuff going on that something can be missed. And I think what I've seen in teams, what I've seen in relationships, what I've seen even in my own family, if you all are listening, I know we try our best, but sometimes there's, or at work with a boss, this is maybe quite common, where your boss gives you a deadline and just assumes, well, nothing will go wrong. Everything's going to work just fine, and you're going to get it done exactly as I imagined. But of course, anything can go wrong with this communication. So if the attention's not there, either from the sender or the receiver, something can be missed. Something can be missed in the middle. There can be expectations or assumptions that just aren't aligned. And so anything can go wrong, and then sometimes your boss is just flabbergasted, like, well, how could you miss this? How could you miss this? Well, as I've learned, and as we're learning it, there's so many ways to miss something. And there's so many ways to have a misunderstanding, a miscommunication. We are not mind readers. We can't anticipate what the other one wants exactly. So communication is key. So again, a future thing to talk about. So just sort of a side note, as we get into, if you resonated with the part of your thoughts running through your mind a lot, and intrusive thoughts, or just even like, what's for dinner, I gotta get out of here, or I'm uncomfortable, what's coming next, you might be a ruminator like myself. Doesn't mean you have OCD, but you might. Doesn't mean you have strong anxiety, but you might. But if you're dealing with rumination, other ways this can show up. If we are so in our head, maybe we forget things. Maybe we have difficulty reading, or even like bumping into things or feeling spacey. What this comes from my experience, because I've had this a lot, is that being so in my head that I'm not taking in the info to remember it. This is another thing I learned in psychology, that when we don't remember something, most of the time it's not a recall issue. It's actually from the storage part. And so if you go to park your car and you're on your phone or thinking about work or something, and you go in and you come out and you have no idea where you parked your car, it's not that you're having an issue recalling it, it's that it didn't get stored properly in the first place. So once I started practicing this, back in the US when I still drove. When I would park, I would say, okay, where am I? Look around. What's a marker? Okay, I'm storing this in my brain, and it was so much more successful in finding it on the way back out. So, same thing. Like, maybe your partner a couple weeks later asks you about a movie you saw together, and you're like, oh, I don't remember that at all. But I have no memory of this. Well, it could be that you were really in your head and thinking of other things. I mean, that's what I had. In reading, same thing. So maybe you read a line, and then your brain takes that line and just starts ruminating and thinking and thinking and thinking. And then your eyes still pass over the words, and you're like, oh, wait, I missed everything. Where was I? So that can be a common thing as well. Same thing with bumping into things, clumsiness. If you're so in your head, you're not taking in your surroundings, and you might bump into things. So that is something that I highly encourage you to look into. For me, it was OCD. I'm sure I talk about this a lot, but exposure response prevention for OCD and also mindfulness. I think these can be used for anyone. You don't have to have OCD, you don't have to have anxiety, just this ability to come back to the present. And what really worked for me also is that mindfulness is not about clearing your mind completely and having this Zen-free mind. For me, the metaphor that worked is this returning muscle. So if you're only listening, I'm sort of like reaching out my arm, and then I notice that my thought has wandered, and I curl it back, like my hand towards my shoulder. And so I'm like building my bicep, but this returning muscle of going away, coming back, going away, coming back. And so it's not about having a clear mind, but building that muscle to return to the present. And to be honest, it's taking a long time, and it's not an overnight fix, not for me. But I have seen improvement. And improvement is not always linear, as always, but my ability to return to the present moment has improved over the past few years. It's worth doing. It's worth practicing that returning muscle. So let's continue on. So I'm going to go sideways for a bit and then combine these two with into teamwork and partnerships and relationships. So we have this paying attention, focusing, returning to the present moment, being there. And then we also have this idea of behavior change. Way back in 2012, I went to the sustainability conference in Nashville and had a workshop that has stuck with me ever since. It was the BJ Fogg model of behavior. So you can look it up online, Fogg with 2 G's, Fogg behavior model. But he has this B equals MAP. Behavior equals your motivation, your ability, and prompts. And this is fascinating to me. I mean, this really, when we talked about when there's that trend of Roman Empire, this is one of my Roman empires. This is what I think about quite often. So, practicing some breathing myself. Okay, so the Fogg behavior model. Behavior equals motivation, ability, prompts. What does that mean? So our motivation is like how much we want to do a behavior. And he also points out later on in research, in his team as well, not just him, that motivation is really hard to manufacture. So when we look at changes to behavior, we're actually going to probably skip motivation and look at ability and prompts for now. So ability is how easy it is to do the behavior. So sitting here recording this, just a moment ago I drank some water. That is an easy behavior for me. It is close to me, within reach. I have motivation to do it because I'm thirsty. And I was reminded to do it because I felt thirst. Now, if I wanted a lemonade right now, that's a bit harder. So I might have some motivation. I like lemonade. That would be nice right now. My ability is quite hard. I don't have any of the ingredients at home right now. Um, I would have to go out to the store and get them. I'd have to stop recording and go do that. I do have my prompt. I'm reminded of it because I'm talking about it. But because my ability is so low, even if my motivation is high and my prompt is now, it's not going to happen. So it fails. I'm not having lemonade right now. But what did happen is I had motivation and ability and a prompt for water that succeeded. So this actually turns up in all areas of life. And so you can dig into it, you can look into it more, and there's like this behavior grid that has dot span path in different colors. I have it up here at the moment that whether it's a one-time thing, a thing you do for a short amount of time, or something you do from now on. Yeah, and you can, there's a lot of interesting things there. Also talking about the peaks of motivation. So as I mentioned before, motivation is hard to manufacture. Motivation can be manufactured sometimes with some pressure or some rewards and that type of thing, but honestly, we just have peaks and troughs throughout the day. That sometimes we're motivated, sometimes we're not, and it's really hard to push that. So instead, another thing is to capitalize on those high moments of motivation. And in those high moments of motivation, we can have created an easier ability, and we can create a prompt to come at that high motivation time. So another thing I learned from psychology is probably another Roman Empire thing that just sticks with me for so long. And if you missed that trend, it was something about women asking their husbands how often they think about the Roman Empire, and they're like, "Oh, all the time." I'm not one of them. I think about psychology things like the fundamental attribution error. The fundamental attribution error is the tendency for people to overemphasize dispositional or personality-based explanations for behavior, while underemphasizing situational or circumstance-based explanations. So basically, that meaning we often think the other person is a jerk or lazy or an a-hole or something like that, and we don't often think about the situation. And the more and more I learn, the more and more I dig into this, and what it means to be kind, and what it means to help others, what it means to live, a life worth living, is it's all context, it's all situation. Like, I love this article about like laziness is a myth. That's a good one to check out because everything in our lives comes from a step before it, which comes from a step before it. So it's circumstance, situation, circumstance, situation to lead to where we are now. So what that means, again, for teamwork, is that everyone's background is different, right? So I'm dealing with OCD. I'm also dealing with not having a lot of wealth. I've had some physical things as well. But beyond that, I am very, very lucky. I grew up in the Midwest of the U.S. And in the age in which I've grown up, being a straight white male, middle class, grew up in a Christian family, like I was the default character, right? So any video game, anything. We'll do a nice little cut there. So, me coming from the US and the age I've grown up, being a straight white male from the Midwest in a Christian family, like I had a lot of privileges. Or I know the P word can be quite hard, but I had a lot of obstacles that I did not experience. So I did not experience any discrimination based on my gender, based on my race. I saw myself in every movie. I mean, pretty much every book I read, every movie I watched, everything I consumed, there were straight white males, American, often from the Midwest or New York or something I could identify with, and I was always present. So I never had that obstacle of not seeing myself. Um, I also was right-handed. I don't have any physical disabilities. So there's so many times that I just did not run into an obstacle. I don't have to feel bad about that. That's also not my fault. Um, but it's something I've learned I need to start thinking about, that all these non-events, all the times that I did not experience something really rough. On the other hand, a lot of people out there do. They experience difficulties based on race, identity, gender, religion, language, culture, um, physical disability, so accessibility with wheelchair, with visual impairment, hearing impairment, anything like that. Also mental health disorders, which have a huge range. And the world is harder for a lot of those folks. And so where does this sort of come together? I'll throw in one more just in case you're a bit more like me and you haven't had a ton of obstacles. But another obstacle we all have is stress in life. So if you've had a job change, you've lost a loved one, housing change, there's so many things out there that can cause stress. One thing I like to do is look at the Rahe Life Stress Inventory. So that's something you can look up. HOLMES RAHE is the researchers, the stress inventory, and it shows all these different indicators, and not all of them negative, some of them positive, like if you've had an outstanding personal achievement, that this can really add some stress to your life. And so we have all these things, right? So we have this attention, we have behavior change, we have these backgrounds. We're bringing all of this in to a conversation, right? So whether it's a teammate, a partner, a parent, a child, a sibling, a roommate, a coworker, a boss, any of that, we're bringing all of that, and not just us, but the other person too. And so then you have these things that we call bids for attention. And this comes from the Gottman Institute. There's this couple, the Gottmans, that do this relationship research that I found really helpful in my life. And I think a lot of others have as well. But they did this longitudinal study looking at couples that were at this retreat that they studied, and then looked at results later on. And I don't want to get the numbers quite wrong, so maybe I'll post that somewhere. But the couples that accepted bids for attention stayed together, while those that did not accept bids for attention tended to break up. And so what can be a bid for attention? It can be like, oh, look at this cool bird I see outside, or, oh man, I've had a rough day. And it's sort of bidding to tell about the rough day. Or, hey, do you want to play this game with me? Or, hey, it can be very explicit. Do you want to come to dinner with me? Something like that. So all of these are bids for attention, and they focus mainly on romantic relationships, but I've found that this works for pretty much anything as well, any other relationship, but except for maybe physical intimacy. But all of these are asking for connection. We're asking for connection, and if we get turned away, so there can be like, they say, turning towards, turning away, or turning against. So if you're turning towards, you're like, oh yeah, very cool bird, or yeah, tell me about your day. Turning away can be like, oh, yeah, okay. Um, Turning against can be like, no, screw you, I'm focused on this, leave me alone, that type of thing. Um, and the more that we don't get those bits for connection, I think the more lost we feel um, with someone else. And it makes it, I would say, personally, less and less willing to engage with them again if I know I'm going to get turned down or turned away or something like that. So, um, bringing those together, if we want to have a better relationship with our teammate, better relationship with our partner, with someone else, we can look at these key things. So, one being this attention and focus. So, let's, as best we can, be present. I'm distracted right now that, oh, I'm not getting enough oxygen while I'm breathing. I'm talking more than I'm breathing in, and I've been thinking about that. Nice meta OCD moment there. So one can be focused and being present. The other is if our frustration comes from, and it usually does, someone doing a behavior that is not quite what we want, um, we need to look at these things. We look at, was there a space where we both had focus and there wasn't a misunderstanding, a miscommunication? If that's true, how do we work together? There's this wonderful Liz and Molly webcomic that I love that shows two people on opposite sides of like this squiggly mess, or two people on the same side of the squiggly mess. Basically saying, are we going to be on opposite sides of this problem and fighting against each other to solve it? Or can we say, hey, there is a problem, and let's get on the same side and work through this together, which that I love. So you're getting there, you're focused, you're looking at it. It wasn't a miscommunication, but that still something happened. So then we can look at that, the fundamental attribution error. Was it, personality, something in their character, or was it circumstance? And it's always circumstance. I won't use the word always because I know that's strong, but I would say almost always. If we really, really, really dig in, there's something there's some circumstance, and that's what we have to change. It's very hard to change a personality, and definitely not in a week. If you want a quick change at home or at work or something, so you start to look at the circumstance, the situation, and how can you, with that behavior model, look at how do we capitalize on motivation? How do we make the ability easier? And can we just schedule a reminder? It's sort of fascinating that if you don't remember to do something, you don't do it. And it really is such a big part, especially in my life. I'm a ruminator and I'm distracted and all that. So if I have a cat visitor at the moment. So if I think through, hi Chica, hi, hi, hi. Yeah, there you go. Okay, good job. Okay, where was I? Looking through all of these steps, attention and focus, um, fundamental attribution error, behavior change, how do we address make the ability easier, and how do we make the prompt at the right time? And then we can get into, like, do I feel welcome and included? Do I feel this bid for attention being accepted? I would say these things, yeah, I think about so often, and I'm not there yet. There's still some relationships professionally or just in the world that I struggle with. That this isn't like a cure-all, a magic recipe to fix any relationship, but it has worked wonders with understanding my family better, understanding my partner better, understanding my colleagues better, those students that I'm trying to help, or when I worked in nonprofits or at AmeriCorps, like those members that I was trying to help. Oh man, it really changed my mindset and my ability to help people when I understand that we all come from different backgrounds and we all have obstacles. and not to say they're all the same, because I think that can also go too far, where someone who is a black trans woman in a wheelchair and say, hey, we all have obstacles. Yeah, don't worry about it. We all have obstacles. No, absolutely. There are some people that the way our society is set up creates more challenges for some people. And to also understand that just because someone is a white woman and has a lot of privileges, let's say a straight white woman has a lot of privileges and non-obstacles in society, still faces obstacles as a woman and still might have hidden disabilities that we don't know about. And so I think we have to be careful in this inclusive space that in our efforts to be more inclusive for some people, that we're not disregarding others just because they have some other access to things. So wrapping up all of that to say all these little steps. So when I said I'm going to start with attention and end at teamwork and relationships and communication. So it's that, again, the focus, I'm being present, I'm paying attention as best I can. I'm understanding that people have obstacles and that it's circumstance. I'm accepting bids for attention, and then I'm looking at anything and my behavior as well that I can change as far as ability and prompts to make my behavior better towards this other person. Because it's really hard to change another person. A lot of times we can just change what's in ourselves. But I know sometimes we really do want someone else to change their behavior. And so I find it's working with them, not against them, working with them to look at the circumstance. How can we improve their ability to do things? How can we set better prompts? How do they know that they feel that we're accepting their bids and that they're included and belonging? I think belonging is the next step in DEI. I've heard that from a few sources that yes, we start with diversity, equity, and inclusion, and beyond that we need belonging. And so that's important for any relationship at all. So okay, that's my sort of semester-long course in about 30 minutes. So thank you for listening. Yeah, I hope, I wish us all better relationships, and as everything with this, it's just rooked, right? We're pursuing best practices, but there are going to be mistakes, and there's still more to learn, and in no way is this hardline expertise. This is just what's working at the moment. So wish you well. Hope to see you next time.